Welcome, everyone. My name is Nancy Lopez. I'm a board member with DC Refers, and I'm excited to welcome you today to the DC Pro Bono Week program called Justice for All, Bridging the Gap Between Low Bono and Pro Bono Services in the District of Columbia. By some counts, there are more than 80 legal services providers in DC. That's a complicated system to navigate. And when you're trying to figure out where to refer a past client or a prospective client, it can be very challenging. So today we're going to give you a small sampling of what some of the legal services providers in DC do, who they serve, what their income guidelines are, and how to refer clients to them. We're focused a lot on organizations that do at least part of their work as affordable legal services, where they might serve people of modest means, those who are in the 200 to 400% of the federal poverty guidelines and might earn too much to qualify for free legal services. But there certainly are a lot of different services in the district. The DC Bar Foundation is creating a coordinated intake and referral system, which is designed to be a one-stop shop for clients where they can go and get connected to the right legal services, but is not up and running yet. It hopefully will be later in 2024. And I'm going to put in the chat some information and a link where you can learn more about that. But in the meantime, we are here today with 8 different legal services providers to tell you a little bit about what they do and how you can tap their services. Before we get started, though, we wanted to ask you about who's in the audience. So we have a little poll where you can tell us about where you work and where you're coming from today. So if we launch the poll, it will be easy for you to select what your type of law practice is, and that will help our speakers know how to tailor their comments to what we're doing today.
Nancy, can you check the polling with your from your account? Somehow it looks like I logged out of mine.
Let me see.
I just checked this a moment ago, but of course Zoom likes to keep us on our toes.
Yes, I think I can.
Okay, fantastic.
There we go. And if you are a speedy, fast person in responding to polls, we have one other question for you. That is, what are you hoping to learn today? What would you like to hear our speakers tell you about their organizations? And that we're not going to put in the poll, we're just going to ask you to type it in the chat. If you have something in particular you're hoping to come away from today's program learning, please put it there, and that way our panelists can help address those questions in what they're doing. And then I also want to highlight that we'll have some time for questions and answers at the end. So if someone says something that's unclear or you want more information about something in particular, we'll have some time for Q&A at the end. All right, it looks like folks have said what they're, where they are working from. And we've got folks from law firms, a lot of legal services providers, people and other nonprofits, but also folks from law schools, federal government or local governments, solo practitioners, and people who are at other places as well. So thanks for telling us about you and where you work. If you have something specific that you're hoping to learn today, put it in the chat. And if not, we are going to keep this a fast-paced, lightning kind of program. And I'm going to start by asking Gabby Majewski from the DC Affordable Law Firm to share with us information about what they do.
Thanks so much, Nancy. I have no doubt you will keep the trains running efficiently today. But as Nancy shared, I am Gabby Molnick-Majewski. I am the very proud executive director of DC Affordable Law Firm. I'm going to put some information in the chat so you can learn more because I may not cover it all here. But DC Affordable Law Firm was founded in 2015 to deliver accessible justice to modest income DC residents. So folks who do not qualify for some of the typical and traditional sources of free legal aid, and yet they can't afford the high cost of standard representation. So as I like to often say it, DC Affordable Law Firm, our core value is that we believe that income should never be a barrier to a family or an individual's receipt of high quality legal representation. And so that's what we're doing. Our goal is to deliver access to legal services and bridge the gaps. And so we do that by both empowering community members members with unmet legal needs through direct representation, all the way from limited scope services through full representation across our practice areas. And we also are unique in that we launched the careers of the next generation of public interest attorneys by partnering with two of our city's finest educational institutions, Georgetown University Law Center and the University of the District of Columbia, David A. Clark School of Law, where we have post-JD fellows who are with us for a 15-month rotation, learning all aspects of civil litigation and different practice areas that we practice in, and then they go on to work with many of the organizations that are represented here today. So we are continuing that spectrum of access to justice beyond the work we do at DCALF. At DCALF, as I shared, so we are centered, we were created and centered to serve folks who are within 200 to 400% of the federal poverty level. That really doesn't make sense unless you tie it to numbers. So in DC, for a single parent raising one child, that's a family with a household range from $39,000 a year to $78,000 a year. So when you think about the high costs of living in the District of Columbia, the high costs of childcare, transportation, housing, food, and everything under the sun, it really, that income doesn't stretch so far, and certainly doesn't leave folks with lots of disposable income on hand to cover their legal needs, which are just as significant as every other person living in the District of Columbia. So in DC, that's about 1 in 5 DC residents, and these are folks who are working in essential low-paying jobs, and yet their representation needs are significant. And so what we do is we try to center the legal needs of those individuals in 3 core practice areas. We are providing representation in family law, and we do that in custody, divorce, alimony. We've handled annulments through serving folks both within that modest income bracket that I spoke of, but we are also proud to be one of the 3 sister organizations running the Family Law Assistance Network, which is a collaboration between DCALF, the DC Bar Pro Bono Center, and Legal Aid DC, where we are delivering rapid response family law assistance on a limited scope basis to DC residents and those with DC legal needs in family law in the same practice areas I discussed, in predominantly child custody and divorce, and doing so in a way that is both free and responsive to their needs, because unrepresented folks are at a high level in family court across DC. We also practice in immigration law. We actually have no income barriers there. We are very fortunate to be able to partner with different sources of philanthropy so that we can meet folks where they are, with our theory of change being that the work we can provide can really set folks on a different trajectory to having permanent legal status and establishing safety and security for themselves and their family members and loved ones. And so we practice in a full range of humanitarian immigration legal needs. Primarily, we are doing asylum work, special immigrant juvenile status. We do EADs, U visas, and some different things in between. And then we also practice in probate, which is estate administration and estate planning. So kind of 2 important sides of the coin for folks who are both navigating what to do when a loved one passes without plans in place, but also being proactive in helping families set their own financial and medical paths forward so that they can plan for themselves and their families with dignity and autonomy. We are proud to be, I see Catherine from LCE in the chat, and there may be others as well, but we're proud to be part of the District of Columbia's first heirs property assistance program. It's a creation by the DC Department of Housing and Community Development, and we are partnering with LCE and the court, I see Judge McLean on this line, to be able to deliver free estate administration services to DC residents. And so the folks that we're serving, depending on practice area, what I'm thrilled to announce is that though DCALF was originally founded to be a low bono model, because of unique partnerships and what we have done to really expand philanthropy, we've really created a system where we are now serving the overwhelming majority of our clients for free, and doing so in a way that can best center their needs, because we know that the clients that we are serving are living on very fixed incomes and do not have lots of additional cash on hand. And so where we can be effective in helping to bridge that gap a little bit further, we are excited to be able to do that. At the same time, we do also offer low bono legal services for individuals where they might not qualify for one of our grant funded representation options. And we do so in a way where folks are paying no upfront, the outside amount of what they would pay for their representation, and they're paying flat monthly costs for their representation that are exceptionally low and affordable, so that we can make it work for DC families. That's, I think I've probably taken more than my 5 minutes, but if you have additional questions, and I would just say for intake purposes, for the Family Law Assistance Network, as well as for our estate administration and our estate planning work, we are open full time for that, Monday through Friday. For FLAN, we have a separate and distinct hotline. I'll put that number in the chat where folks can call. We also have a court-based presence a few days a week, and we're happy to send that out. But there is a hotline for FLAN that is open from 8 to 3 on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday, where they can do a live intake and be paired with an attorney, ideally within 48 business hours. And for our estate planning and estate administration work, we are evergreen, open for intake. I'll put that telephone number in the chat. Folks can also go online to complete an intake. We have an intake portal available in a few different languages. And for our family law and our immigration work, for modest income folks and for our immigration practice across the board, regardless of income, we are open the last full week of every month for intake. Though we're happy to consider warm referrals if there's a pressing need from anyone at any given time. So I'll put that additional information in the chat. And thank you so much for learning here. I'm happy to stay on and answer questions you may have.
Great. Gabby, thank you so much. It has been so exciting to see how the Affordable Law Firm has grown. It feels like it wasn't that long ago that it was founded, and it's really exciting to start with people who are recent graduates and getting them trained and involved in the culture and the community, to go on to either do legal services work or to open up their own shop and do low bono work. So it's a really unique program, and thanks for your leadership. Next up, we want to have Jenadine Nanini from the DC Bar Pro Bono Center, and she's going to focus on the family law side of things.
Hi, welcome. Thank you for having me. My name is Jenadine Nanini, and I'm at the DC Bar Pro Bono Center. I'm the managing attorney of family law and immigration. And I will say I'm a proud product of DCALF. So I came from Georgetown and went through DCALF and am loving being a part of the legal service community here in DC. So can second Gabby's sentiments about the work at the DC Affordable Law Firm and how great it is. I am going to primarily talk about our Family Law Assistance Network, which Gabby gave you a little taste of. But before I get in there, I can give a little briefer about what the DC Bar Pro Bono Center provides in general, just to not overlap too much. So we provide services to individuals and nonprofits and small businesses. So if you have nonprofits or small businesses that are looking to start a business in the district and they're serving a lower income neighborhood or they are lower income, we will help them start their business, help them with all their business processes, all of that. We also have a bankruptcy clinic, a consumer law resource center. We have a landlord tenant assistance network and a housing practice, which Paul will talk about next. We have our family practice, both through the Family Law Assistance Network and through additional services we can provide. And then we have a immigration clinic that occurs quarterly. Our next one will be on December 2nd at College Rosario. So really a gap filler for the community when, as you all know, our providers are way over capacity in many areas. This is just one area we can fill some gaps. We have a walk-in clinic on Saturday that happens quarterly. Clients can come in for free. They do not have to be DC residents, and we can help them with any immigration issue. We have expert mentors in a range of areas and help them get to the next step of their case. We similarly do that with our advice and referral clinic, which happens monthly on a Saturday, both at the Michelle Obama Center at Bread for the City in Southeast, and we're going to open a second location at the DC Bar building, which is going to be fabulous in November. So we'll have 2 sites. And we help people with any civil legal issue. And again, walk-in free. We have experts in a range of content areas. So that's a great gap filler for the community as well. And then we have our advocacy and justice clinics. So we can place cases with pro bono attorneys at law firms, Department of Justice, like any of the government agencies, law school clinics, and firms. And we provide mentorship and training, and we place a range of cases. We place family law, housing, and Social Security public benefits cases. So, and then as Gabby mentioned, probate is such a need in the district. So in 2024, we will be launching our probate practice as well. And I think there might be some partnership with Gabby and company, but TBD on that. So I will drop in the chat where all the free legal help options are for the DC Bar Pro Bono Center. And now I will transition to the Family Law Assistance Network, which is a phenomenal network, as Gabby mentioned, with the DC Affordable Law Firm, Legal Aid, and Pro Bono Center. I was a co-founding attorney of that program with Gabby. I think Gabby's day 2 on DCALF, we started it. So we launched in March of 2020, completely remotely because of the pandemic. But we were happy to report as we get more staff and funding, we're able to staff simultaneously in person in courtroom 105. So I will drop this in the chat. Our central intake is housed at the DC Affordable Law Firm, which is fabulous. And so litigants can call a one-stop shop to the number and email in the chat above Gabby's comment there, or they can email. And we also accept referrals from other people that are referring on behalf of the litigant, caseworkers, judges, clerks, etc. We're also in person in courtroom 105 on Tuesdays and Fridays from 9 to 3. And starting mid-November, we will be in person in courtroom 105 Tuesday through Friday, so 4 days a week. And we will also have our hotline going at the central intake at DCALF. And our mission was really to close the access to justice gap in family court and provide, I call it the ER of family law, rapid return, limited scope brief services. And we tried to do that both in a remote and in-person model. And we serve people in the domestic relations branch of DC Superior Court who have a case in that branch, and custody, child support, parentage, divorce, annulment, common law marriage, you name it. As long as their case is in the domestic relations branch, we will take it. And if they are in DC or out of DC, it doesn't matter, as long as their case is in DC, which happens a lot with family law cases. Dad lives in Maryland, mom and child live here. We'll take that case. So, and we serve people below 200% of the poverty line, although each organization does have the ability to deviate a little bit above that. So, but that's primarily our demographic of who we serve. So happy to answer questions as well. And thank you all for being here.
Kennedy, thank you. It is so comforting to have a phone number where you can say, if you have a case in the domestic relations branch and you have a case that you're going to court tomorrow, you can call and talk to someone and at least do that kind of emergency room service and have people not feel quite so alone and lost. So thank you.
And may I add, Nancy, the fabulous thing is once they call the DCALF central hotline or the hotline at DCALF, they'll allocate a referral to one of the orgs. And if we can't take it, they will do the work for the litigant, punting it to the other organization. And so it's great for the litigants as well. If they are conflicted out of one org, central intake at DCALF will reallocate them. So it's fabulous for the litigant.
And just to underscore that, since our March 2020 launch for FLAN, we have had over 2,700 referrals for FLAN, and I think a dozen of whom were fully conflicted out of service by all 3 organizations. So because of the partnership, we're able to serve effectively anyone with the eligibility credentials to be able to avail themselves of our support.
That's amazing. But we know that there is also a great need for legal services in the housing area. And so I'm going to open it up for Paul de Blasi, who's also at the DC Bar Pro Bono Center, to talk about what's going on in the landlord-tenant area of that part.
Thank you, Nancy. And thank you so much, Jenny, for giving a great description of FLAN and also the Pro Bono Center in general. So I don't have to. I appreciate that. My name is Paul de Blasi. My pronouns are he, him. I'm the managing attorney for housing at the Pro Bono Center. And the program I'm here to talk about today is the Landlord-Tenant Legal Assistance Network. So the Landlord-Tenant Legal Assistance Network is a variety of things, but you can describe it as a phone number that tenants or landlords can call to get legal information, legal advice, or representation. And this phone number, which is 202, I'll put in the chat after I stop talking, 202-780-2575, and I'll also put in a link after I stop chatting as well, is a way that any tenant who's facing eviction can get some kind of legal assistance. Depending on their income, they might be eligible to be sent to one of several different legal services providers. That's legal aid, Neighborhood Legal Services Program, Bread for the City, Rising for Justice, us, the Pro Bono Center, will also represent tenants, the Council for the Elderly. I go through all of them. I think I might have. And anyway, to get representation or advice of some kind, or if they're above the income guidelines, then they will at least be speaking with a pro bono volunteer attorney who can give legal information to that tenant or landlord related to that eviction case. And in the context then of the kind of other kind of assistance that the Landlord Tenant Legal Assistance Network provides, there's assistance with housing conditions or housing code violations for tenants, and for landlords who are, and the landlords that we can provide assistance to are small landlords that are individuals that own 4 or less units in the as landlords. Yeah, so that's basically that's the way that tenants, if they're facing eviction, they can get help. And if they're seeking help with conditions, they can also get help. We also have the Landlord Tenant Resource Center, which is in person at the Landlord Tenant Courthouse on Tuesdays between 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. And there we have attorneys from the Bono Center and volunteer attorneys that are also providing legal information or helping tenants with filling out documents, or landlords with filling out documents or other pleadings related to the eviction matters they're in or potentially housing code violations as well. And in terms of, there's a question about and we have law firms that send volunteers to both help staff the remote, provide information to tenants and landlords remotely and or in person. And I think, I don't know, I think that's basically it. If you want to, if a tenant or a landlord is seeking assistance in an eviction matter and they're a small landlord, then they can call us, and they can also call about housing code violations.
That's really helpful. I know we don't often think about the small landlords as people who need legal help, but often if they are aware of what the rules are and what they're allowed to do and what not to do, helping them navigate the system can kind of serve people well. And it's also very cool the way that you incorporate the law firm help. It's nice to have law firm attorneys who can come in and do their shift and be of service and gain expertise in the field of law. So very cool system.
Thank you, Nancy.
Next, I am pleased to introduce Jody Feldman. She is the first pro bono manager for the DC courts, which is a very exciting position for the courts to take on. And she is going to talk about ways to connect with pro bono and affordable counsel opportunities at the court and what the court-based services are. Sometimes there isn't a legal services provider, but the court has some offices and self-help centers that can be also a source of assistance to people. So Jody.
Thank you, Nancy. Hello, everyone. It's great to be here today. As Nancy mentioned, I came on board earlier this year at the DC courts as their first ever pro bono manager. In this new role, I lead the court's efforts in raising awareness about the need for more pro bono and affordable representation in the DC courts, particularly for litigants on the high volume civil calendars, some of which we've been talking about today already in the landlord tenant court, domestic relations, domestic violence, and debt collection. In these courts, unfortunately, upward of 80 to 90% of individual litigants are unrepresented. And most likely the reason is because they can't not afford a lawyer. Consistent with today's theme, I want to highlight several resources for unrepresented persons that are managed by and available on site here at the court. And I emphasize managed by because you actually already have heard about some resources that are located at the court but are managed by external organizations. And so there's a wide variety of different opportunities. So I will focus on those that are managed by the court. There are 2 court-run self-help centers, one in the family court and one in the probate division. And I think someone earlier wrote in the chat that they wanted to know where to send folks who needed help with probate. So hopefully you're getting some information now because they could come to the court, to the probate self-help center, And as Gabby mentioned, they can also contact the DC Affordable Law Firm. And hopefully before too long, they'll also be able to contact the DC Bar Pro Bono Center. So
And legal counsel for the elderly.
legal counsel for the elderly. Thank you. Thank you. So we are trying to expand and build as a community, trying to build resources in that area, an area where we know there is a lot of need. So as I mentioned, there are 2 court-run self-help centers. The Family Court Self-Help Center is a walk-in service and a call service. You can call in as well, that provides legal information about family law matters, including divorce, custody, visitation, and child support. The Family Court Self-Help Center is staffed by court staff, and we also use volunteers from all across the legal spectrum to help meet with customers. At the Probate Self-Help Center, also a walk-in service located at the court, and they provide legal information about matters involving wills, estate administration, adult guardianship, guardianship of minors' estates, and trusts. And similarly, the Self-Help Center, as the Family Court Self-Help Center, the Probate Self-Help Center is staffed by court staff, and we also use volunteers to help supplement. Both the Family Court Self-Help Center and the Probate Self-Help Center do not provide legal advice, but they provide information, and they can work with customers and explain the law, explain legal options available for the customers. They can help identify the appropriate forms that a customer may need to fill out and file. They can provide information about how to file things, how to serve process, and explain court procedures and much more. So even though they're not able to give legal advice, they are able to help in a variety of ways. The court also hosts 2 domestic violence intake centers, one in the Moultrie Courthouse at Judiciary Square, and one in Anacostia at the Big Chair Building. At these centers, survivors of domestic violence can get help filing a petition for a temporary protective order, and they can also access a variety of other services provided by community partners, such as safe advocates who can help with safety planning and social services, legal services providers, and the Metropolitan Police Department. So again, there is court staff at the domestic violence intake centers, but there are also other external partners able to provide wraparound services for folks who are in need of help in that area. The court also has a court navigator program. Right now, the court navigator program is located in the Building B of the Superior Court, and the navigators are available to help litigants who have pending landlord and tenant cases or small claims cases. The court is planning to expand the navigator system in the future, but right now it's focusing on landlord, tenant, and small claims. And the navigators can help with physical navigation, just where to go when someone comes into the courthouse, but also with process navigation as well. All of these resources that I've mentioned are available to any unrepresented persons. There are no income guidelines. There are no other eligibility guidelines. And for those who visit any of the court's resources who do want a lawyer and are eligible for free or low-cost services like we're talking about today, all of these folks are able to provide referral information to external organizations outside of the court where folks can look for a lawyer. I also want to just briefly mention the court's multi-door dispute resolution division. As many of you know who practice in Superior Court, parties involved in pending Superior Court cases may be referred to multi-door for mediation. But what you may not be aware of is that multi-door also runs a community information and referral program that offers free mediation services to DC residents who do not have a case pending. So if there are parties who have a dispute in DC and they want to go to multi-door and try to mediate their dispute, short of filing a court case, that service is available to them. Very briefly before I finish, I want to mention you've heard a lot about external organizations that have resources at the court. And I just want to mention 2 more that haven't been covered so far today. One is the Child Support Resource Center, which is located at the court and is a partnership between Legal Aid DC and Bread for the City. And they can help folks with child support issues. And the Bankruptcy Assistance Center, which just today, it was announced that the center used to be located at the federal courthouse where the bankruptcy court is, but they are now moving and will be located in Building B at the Superior Court effective November 3rd. So that's another great resource that I'm working on getting information out on the consortium listserv about. And finally, I know you're all hearing a lot of information today, so please consider me as a resource. That is one of the things I'm trying to do, is be a resource for the community. I'd be happy to hear from you. I can talk to you about where to send clients who need help, but I can also talk to folks who are interested in volunteering either at the court or at any of the organizations we've been talking about today, and I can direct you in the right direction. So please reach out. Thank you.
Jody, we do have one quick question in the chat that I want to jump on right now. The Dispute Resolution Center, is that income constrained, or anyone can go and ask Multidor to help with mediate a dispute outside of the court case? Oops, you're muted.
So sorry. Thank you for the question. There are no income guidelines. So the only eligibility is that you're a DC resident.
It is great to hear about all the resources and all the places to refer people who need legal assistance. I was also having my ears perk up at all of the places that there are to volunteer. So if you are lawyers who are looking to find meaningful volunteer opportunities, some of the things that Jody talked about are great ways, the self-help centers and things like that. You're going to hear a lot of opportunities to get involved from all of our different speakers today, but certainly the court is one of those places as well. Next, we have Sam Halpert, who's on the board of directors of DC Refers with me, and he's going to talk about this unique online directory of affordable legal services.
Thank you, Nancy. I'll do my best. As Nancy mentioned, we serve together on the volunteer board for DC Refers. In my day job, I'm the Director of Public Service Initiatives at the National Association for Law Placement. So DC Refers is located at dcrefers.org, and we are a referral network. So we don't offer services directly, but we are coordinating the process of connecting modest means potential clients with attorneys who may be interested in serving them. And also, I think we try and cultivate a community of attorneys who can support one another in trying to develop modest means service as part of their business model. The income guidelines are present, but also flexible. So when you do our intake form, you have the opportunity to answer a few questions to see if you fall between 200 and 400% of the federal poverty level, which is the range in which attorneys in our referral system have indicated that they're willing to work with clients on a modest means basis. We also encourage attorneys to consider clients above 400% on a sliding scale. So people who are in sort of the next range up, we ask attorneys to think about clients' means even above and beyond 200 to 400%. And indeed, anyone interested in looking for legal services is able to come to DC Refers and look for an attorney through our service, regardless of whether they fit within our directly targeted range or not. In 2022 and in general, the major areas of interest that we saw from prospective clients were in issues related to family law, landlord and tenant concerns, and employment concerns. But the range of issues that we are able to take on is really a function of the expertise that attorneys in the network are able to present and provide. When an attorney applies to join the DC Refers referral system, we ask them to provide some professional and some client references that relate to the specific areas of practice that they want to be listed in. And we try to look both at what prospective clients are asking for and also what attorneys are interested in, and create a space where people can find one another. Before this presentation, if you had asked me what makes us really unique, I would have said that it's the fact that we are offering these referrals for representation, but also for mediation. It's exciting to hear. I didn't realize that the Multidor program wasn't income limited. That's really great. We have mediation services as well available through DC Refers. It's a small area of what we're doing currently, but it is something we are actively working to expand. And Yeah, I will pause there for now in order to keep things flowing, but I'm really, really excited to be a part of this conversation, and I'm learning a lot from everyone who's speaking.
Thank you, Sam. What I love about DC Refers is how it brings people together. The lawyers who are on our panel are mostly solo practitioners and small firm lawyers who pro bono might not be in their budget for their business as a lawyer, but they're able to provide reduced fee services and therefore give back and meet their ethical obligations to give back to people who otherwise wouldn't get representation. And it's just a wonderful community. We do some professional development and try and bring those folks together. The pro bono community is strong in DC, and the low bono community is growing, I think.
That's very well said, and you're right that I didn't expand enough on that. That's something else that we are trying to do with the referral directory. You know, as Nancy mentioned, it can be challenging as a working attorney, particularly a solo practitioner, to figure out how to fit these kinds of things into your business model. And as people learn how to do this successfully, we try to be an environment where folks can share insights with one another and support each other in the work of developing this as part of their overall practice.
Next is Sarah Tenen, who is the executive director of the DC Volunteer Lawyers Project, which is another organization that does more than they would be able to otherwise because of the volunteers that they tap and the opportunities that people have to volunteer with them. Sarah, tell us about what you do.
Sure, thanks, Nancy. So as Nancy said, my name is Sarah Tenen, and I'm with DC Volunteer Lawyers Project. At DC Volunteer Lawyers Project, we provide free legal services to 3 primary populations. In our domestic violence practice, we represent clients both in civil protection order cases and in family law cases seeking custody of their children and or divorce from their abusers. And we also have an immigration practice where we provide services to immigrant survivors of gender-based violence seeking various forms of humanitarian relief. And we have our child advocacy practice where we represent vulnerable children who are growing up in homes with abuse and violence and other dangerous circumstances. I'm not going to talk as much about that practice area because in that practice area, we receive our referrals directly from the court. So they're not referrals that other practitioners can really refer to us. As Nancy mentioned, we utilize an innovative volunteer lawyer model where we recruit and train and support about 500 volunteers each year. And by doing this, we are really able to leverage our impact. So we have a staff of about 34 people, about 20 of whom are lawyers. And in 2023, we will be able to provide legal services to about 2,500 victims and children here in the district. I'm going to put information in the chat about how to get involved as a volunteer if you're interested, but that's not the primary purpose today, but I would be remiss if I didn't at least mention it. So I'll put that in the chat. So in terms of referring clients to us, we use the HUD guidelines with a few small exceptions in our domestic violence practice when there are clients who maybe just don't have access to the resources because of the abuse. But in general, we use the HUD guidelines. In terms of referring cases to us, we have 8 weekly clinics throughout the city. I'll also put that information in the chat once I'm done. And so we have an intake phone number you can refer clients to, and also to any of our walk-in or remote clinics. When thinking about clients or cases that are good to send to DCVLP, certainly if domestic violence is a factor, if you have a client who maybe identifies as a survivor of domestic violence, sometimes they come in and they have a clear plan of what they need help with, filing a CPO, a violation of a CPO, extending a family law help, custody, modification of custody, divorce, or clients maybe where you suspect domestic violence. Oftentimes clients come into us and don't initially identify as a survivor of domestic violence, and we're happy to kind of navigate through that process with the client in a very trauma-informed manner. Most of our clients are residents of the district, but some of our funding enables us to take cases where residents maybe live in Maryland or Virginia, but their cases in DC. But again, most of our clients are residents of the district. We did recently open an office in Montgomery County, Maryland, out of the Family Justice Center. So we also have kind of separate of what I'm talking about today. We do have a Maryland office. So clients needing help with domestic violence matters in Montgomery County, we also have a separate intake process for that. We have a growing appellate practice in our domestic violence area. So if you have a client who you helped in an initial domestic violence case, and maybe there's a question about the outcome and they'd like to be screened for an appeal or considered for an appeal, we do have an appellate practice in our domestic violence program. In terms of our immigration cases for immigrant survivors of gender-based violence and or domestic violence, really in the broadest sense of the term, we help with asylums, U visas, T visas, VAWA self-petitions, SIJS cases, employment authorization. Our clinics, as I mentioned, are a really great access point and referrals. As I said, we have 8 weekly clinics. Some clients come in and really all they need is a clinic consult. They're just really looking for limited information about kind of what their options are, and they just want to take that information and kind of pause for a little bit. And other clients come in maybe with a pending case or ready to file a case, and we can help them either on a limited basis or full representation. So we have clinics on Wednesdays at the Mount Pleasant Neighborhood Library where we help with immigration and domestic violence matters. We have one on Fridays at the Commons at Stanton Square where we're co-located with Martha's Table and Community of Hope. That's a domestic violence one. We have 2 medical legal partnerships and 2 new ones coming, and we have many remote clinics. So I will put all of that information in the chat and happy to answer any questions.
Sarah, thank you so much. I think the model of all the volunteer attorneys in the way that allows you to leverage your resources is really phenomenal. And as a volunteer myself, I can say it's a great experience with fantastic supervision. So really a great way to get involved, and you're doing great work serving a lot of people.
Thanks.
Next on our list is Laura Brown with First Shift Justice Program. And what I love about them is they have a laser focus on a specific issue. And I think that makes them very unique. So Laura, tell us about what you do.
Hi, thank you. After listening to everybody else, it also makes it a lot easier for me to give this presentation because we just do employment law. My name is Laura Brown. I'm the executive director of First Shift Justice Project, and we do employment law, and specifically we serve pregnant workers and caregiving workers. So our income guidelines are roughly generally 300% of the federal poverty guidelines for a family of 2. And that's somewhere in the neighborhood of $60,000 of income annually. But we don't turn anyone away for services. What we do potentially sometimes when someone exceeds our guidelines is that we limit services. So anyone can call us for a one-time consult or some legal advice about an issue that they are going through at work related to if it's in our issue areas. But we do have to limit services if people exceed our guidelines, and we only offer full representation generally to people who are within that threshold. The employment law issues we specifically cover are employment discrimination on the basis of pregnancy or family responsibilities, helping people get access to on-the-job accommodations for pregnancy and breastfeeding, access to job protected leave from work, and then now DC paid leave benefits. And for DC paid leave benefits, that includes helping people fill out and submit the application and getting their medical provider certification as needed. We strive to be low barrier in the way people can reach us. We will take inquiries by email, by phone, by text. We have an online intake form that people can fill out. We serve people in Spanish and English easily. And then also through the Community Legal Interpreter Bank, we can get access to interpretation and translation for other languages. Just as a point of clarification, because we are employment law, we do serve people who work or live in DC, Maryland, or Virginia, because people work and live in different places around here, and it's really hard to limit our services in that way, despite what our funders sometimes want us to do. And so we provide services to anybody who works in any of the jurisdictions, and we have lawyers in our staff who are barred in Virginia, Maryland, and DC. What services do we provide? I already talked about helping people fill out applications for paid leave benefits. We will take referrals for anybody who has an issue within our scope at any stage they are in trying to exercise those rights. We are trying to be preventive and reaching people as early as possible to help them avoid job loss and avoid having a case that they have to take to court. And so we spend a lot of time in the area of pro se legal services, helping people devise strategies to exercise their rights in the workplace, helping them develop talking points to talking to bosses and supervisors, reaching out to medical providers who aren't providing documentation in a way that's helpful, ghostwriting emails, text messages, anything that we can do to keep someone out of court is a success for us. But we also do provide full representation where we're filing claims either in court or more typically in the Office of Human Rights or the Department of Employment Services or Office of Administrative Hearings. The one thing I didn't mention is that we generally don't take walk-ins because we are on a hybrid work schedule and there's no guarantee that anyone will be at our office. But we are happy to serve people in person, usually by appointment. And that is all. Thank you.
That's great. I love your passion for making this issue important and accessible and helping people when they need help. It's a true service. All right, our next speaker is Katie Fayok at Legal Counsel for the Elderly, where she helps with the probate private attorney panel. There's a better name for it than that, though.
Hi, it's the reduced fee panel. So I'm a hotline attorney at Legal Counsel for the Elderly, and I manage our reduced fee panel, which is a panel of private attorneys who will serve our clients who have either issues that we don't handle in-house or who make too much money to be served in-house with a wide variety of legal issues. Legal Counsel for the Elderly serves seniors in DC, so DC residents who are 60 or over, or if they have a Social Security issue, they can be as young as 55. Our hotline gives brief advice to clients of any income, and our self-help office helps people of any income with forms, self-help, demand letters, things like that. For in-house representation, our income limit is 250% of the federal poverty guidelines and $15,000 in assets. Our reduced fee panel, which I mentioned, we give referrals to private attorneys for people of any income at all. If people make less than 400% of the federal poverty guidelines and have less than 233% of the federal poverty guidelines in assets, and that's about $34,000 for a household of one, they can get reduced fee help from those private attorneys. So the attorneys agree to charge them a reduced fee rate. The best way to refer people to us is to have them call our hotline, and that's 202-434-2120, and I'll put that in the chat. Our hotline sometimes closes, and people get frustrated with that when our appointments fill up. So the best time to tell people to call is first thing in the morning. We do, in terms of practice areas, our hotline, our reduced fee panel, and our self-help offices will do pretty much anything. We don't do criminal, immigration, or business, but anything else, we will at least try to give advice and brief services. So that includes torts, that includes small claims court, advice and forms, that includes bankruptcy, probate, and estate planning for people who are over income limits. For in-house services, we do estate planning, public benefits, landlord-tenant, homeownership issues, probate issues, consumer issues, and guardianship and conservatorship. And so those are all for full service representation for people who make under 250% of the federal poverty guidelines. What makes Legal Counsel for the Elderly unique is the breadth of topics we cover. We will, like I said, try to give advice on just about anything. And also the existence of our reduced fee panel and our self-help offices, which are designed to help people who make over the income limits for traditional free legal services. And as far as who's the perfect person to refer to us, that would be any DC senior. Anyone who's 60 and over who's a DC resident is great to refer to us. If we can't help them, we will refer them to other organizations that can.
Katie, thank you. I think the reduced fee panel has been a model for DC refers in a lot of ways. Whenever we have a question, we come to Katie and say, how do you guys do this? So it is a great way to help people who earn too much to qualify for free legal services in from other places. And again, another great way for solo and small firm lawyers who want to do some good in the world to have a way to connect to clients who can pay something, but just not their standard market rates. And that brings us to Sarah Hollander. Sarah is going to tell us about two different things. One is the DC Debt Collection Hotline, Defense Hotline, and the other is SEDC DC. So Sarah, bring us home.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. Yes, so I'm going to talk about those two resources today. First, and I'm Sarah Hollander with SEDC DC. So first, SEDC DC. At SEDC DC, our mission is to safeguard the legal rights and financial health of DC residents with low incomes dealing with the often devastating consequences of abusive debt collection practices and other consumer-related issues. We carry out this mission with the goal of addressing the racial wealth gap. And we do three main direct services where we offer legal representation and also financial counseling, systemic advocacy, and community outreach. Our eligibility criteria is that we serve DC residents who are or below 100% of federal poverty guidelines with legal issues in the practice area. Most of our work is defensive debt collection, but where a business or a defensive debt collection where a business or a financial company alleges that somebody owes money, but we do occasionally also take affirmative cases. And then we have specific sub-projects for medical debt, for individuals with disabilities, and for victims of crime, especially financial crime. Staff attorneys and pro bono attorney volunteers and pro bono financial counselors all help to provide those services. So to get in touch with us, or if you are interested in volunteering, I'll put some information in the chat. And we, along with Legal Aid DC, staff the virtual courtroom on the collections docket. Those cases are generally scheduled for Monday and Tuesday and include both small claims cases and civil action cases. And so turning to the second, we also help operate the DC Debt Collection Defense Hotline, which is a joint project of Legal Aid and SEDC DC in collaboration with Catholic Charities Legal Network, DC Bar Pro Bono Center, Legal Counsel for the Elderly, and Neighborhood Legal Services. The hotline is live answered by a SEDC DC or legal aid attorney Monday through Friday. There is only one person staffed to the hotline every day, though, so there is occasionally the need to leave a message and then the person will call you back. And that is specifically for cases that are in active collection litigation. And that hotline also came out of the pandemic, but similarly to ones before spoken about, we are able to manage keeping that hotline open, and the number is here in the chat as well. And that is short and sweet about us because we also similarly have a singular focus, so it makes it easier to do this part of the presentation, which leaves us a few minutes for questions.
And that's exactly what I want to do, is open it up for questions. And you can feel free to unmute and ask your question, or you can put it in the chat if that is more comfortable. But also a huge thank you to all of our panelists for being here today and telling us about what you do, but also just for the work that you do. It is somewhat amazing that there are so many legal services providers in DC, but there are still 80 to 90% of litigants in high volume courts who show up without a lawyer. And sometimes with not just without a lawyer, but without having talked to someone about what's going to happen and how they can help themselves or represent themselves adequately. And so it's great to have the hotlines where people can get brief information and the self-help centers to get information, but it's also great that there are places where people can connect with full representation. So questions? I want to give people a minute to do questions. And so I want to ask our panelists, if you could have one hope for the DC courts and how to increase representation there, what would be the one thing you would take your like magic wand and create or do?
Well, I will just say that I would love to have a civil Gideon. So I would love to have the right to an attorney in all civil cases. That would be my magic wand.
I'll say short of Geneviève's wish, which we all agree with, I think, I would wish that every lawyer in DC would take some time to do some pro bono work to help in their community.
And I'll just build on Jody's comment there with my own little permutation, which is if you can't commit to pro bono, which I think everybody can in some capacity or way, shape, or form, you can contribute time, talent, or treasure. So the legal services organizations here all rely on a whole array of philanthropic supports to be able to have the staff and resources on hand to be able to serve the community. And so we appreciate any ways in which you can support. No amount is too small. So thank you.
And also you can join DC Refers if you would like to fill that mission by doing low bono work.
We do have a question for Katie Bayok in the chat. How do you screen and place cases with a reduced fee panel?
So the way our process works is clients call in, they talk to an intake person who gets their demographic information and some basics about the case. Then they have an appointment with a hotline attorney, and that hotline attorney gives them advice over the phone. And if they have a legal issue that is something that we don't handle in-house, but our reduced fee panel attorneys do handle, or if it's for a client who's over the income limit for in-house representation, then that hotline attorney will ask the client if they would like to be connected with a reduced fee panel attorney. And if they are, we then reach out to our panel and find someone who's available to help that client.
It seems like always the first step is to find a way to connect someone. And I was really encouraged to see how many of these places it's a phone call and someone will live answer the phone, or if it's backed up, you'll leave a message and they will get back to you. There are, and it's also encouraging when there are online forums so people can reach out for help at any time. Other questions today? I'm going to put information about one other program in the chat, and I will invite our panelists to do so as well if there are other things that you haven't put in the chat yet that you would like to. It's about the next DC Refers Reconnect program. It is on AI issues for low-wage workers. We have someone from the EEOC coming to speak about how AI is impacting employment law cases. And it's co-sponsored with the Metropolitan Washington Employment Lawyers Association and the Labor Employment Lawyers Community of the DC Bar. It's on Tuesday, November 14th at 4:30. It's virtual, and the registration link is in the chat as well. One more question. We will save the chat. We will also send out a follow-up email to everyone who registered with flyers from our panelists with flyers and links and all kinds of information. So I should have said at the start that you didn't have to sit and take notes, but if you took notes, you'll have even a better outline once we get the follow-up email together. And then as a final question, maybe everyone could say, do you have opportunities for law students at your organization? Or just come off and tell us if there are.
We do. And interested law students should reach out to that same person I put in the chat, AJ Huber. We can work with the student's schedule, but it is sort of internship-like usually, not discrete projects.
We take interns and we actually pay them. So we're part of AARP, and so all our internships are paid.
Law students can volunteer at the Probate Self-Help Center, and if folks are interested, they can reach out to me.
We have law student internships too, and undergrad as well. And our interns are also paid.
Nancy, question. I can wait though.
No, you're fine. We take law students for our immigration clinic and our advice and referral clinics. And then we also place cases with law school clinics. And every now and then we do get some law school interns during the summer. So feel free to reach out. I'll drop my email in the chat.
Yeah, the question that I had is, to do the volunteer or the low bono, does one need to be a DC barred attorney, or could a Maryland barred attorney like myself participate?
I can answer.
Go ahead, Sarah.
Go ahead.
I would say for the immigration clinic, as long as you are barred, you are fine. As long as you're not a government attorney, it is fine. For our advice and referral clinic, we are just doing DC issues, so you would need to be DC barred.
And for DC Volunteer Lawyers Project, as long as you're admitted and in good standing in any jurisdiction in the United States, then you can work with us on cases.
And at the DC courts, you can be licensed anywhere, and you could volunteer at the Family Court Self-Help Center or the Probate Self-Help Center.
Okay. Thank you.
And I just wanted to note, as far as your question about being Maryland barred, DC Refers is a network for the District of Columbia, at least currently. But there was someone who was present at this event earlier, who I don't see still being here now, who was the executive director of a nonprofit based in Maryland called Civil Justice.
Right.
That is a network of attorneys doing modest means representation in Maryland.
Yep.
And then one more question about the Probate Self-Help Center. Is it the replacement for the Probate Resource Center, or are they different things?
Yes and no. The Probate Self-Help Center was stood up by the court after the Probate Resource Center, which sounds like you were familiar with, had to close shop a few years ago. However, the DC Bar Pro Bono Center is in the works of reestablishing the Probate Resource Center, and then there will be both the Probate Self-Help Center and the Probate Resource Center, and they will be working in collaboration.
Nice. Any other questions? All right. Well then, thank you everyone again for joining us. I hope you learned a lot. I feel like I did. There are so many people doing great work in DC, and there is so much need for more people to do great work in DC. So I hope you'll find your way to volunteer, and when you have friends, neighbors, clients, former clients reaching out to you saying, where do I go for help? You'll have a little better idea about how to do that after today. So thank you everyone. Have a great afternoon.
Bye, everyone.